Chris has been pretty silent this episode, so why don't we give you the first round here, Chris? You got something?
Why, thank you. Music school is doing more harm than good these days. As someone who just got out of it and seeing a bunch of my friends that are still in it after being on the gigging scene for a little bit, you're almost better off just kind of going through YouTube Academy or, linking up with friends. But the academia side of it was, I see it just kind of imprinting a certain kind of mindset on players, and it definitely encouraged me to go to a certain direction that I had to kind of, get some real world experience in and just kind of get other perspectives in terms of like a career and what I wanted to be doing and all that kind of stuff. I don't know. Music school, it's a dangerous place.
Are you reading my mind right now? I literally have been having this. I had the same conversation earlier, and I'll voice my. I will agree with you 1,000% on that.
Heck yeah.
That you are 1,000% correct, and I think that we're finally coming to an age where the majority of musical institutions at this point are a business, and you having $100,000 in debt getting out of school to be a musician, okay, like just let that sink in.
Yeah.
That's a lot of dinner jazz gigs to pay that off, aka for 90 years you played one every night, so
yeah.
So I 100% agree with you there, and I do think musical education is it needs to go back to what it was at one time, which is a mentorship, where, and I've been, that's the main reason why I teach, is to counteract what I think is bullshit, and it's not very popular to tell people, and thousands of people that have invested a lot of money in it, but I think it's more valid to find somebody that you have accessibility to, or even nowadays because of the internet, you can have any fucking musician in the world say, I want to learn from you.
Yeah,
and it's going to cost you probably $100-$200 an hour instead of $100,000. Anyway, yeah. I agree with you there.
Yeah, man. So I went and auditioned for this jazz school. And the best thing that happened was that I didn't get in. And they just started the tech program. So I studied sound engineering, production, all this shit, but they would classically train you to a lesser extent than like the jazz or classical kids. So I ended up getting lessons with this cat, James Hogan, that was just an unreal player and just had a similar mentality of like, it wasn't like, hey, you have to shed Donna Lee or shed Autumn Leaves. It's like, bring in what you want to bring in. I'll show you cats that probably inspired him. It just showed me so many different branches of the tree. And we talked about how that wasn't like what other students right next to me were getting. It was really baffling. And so like, I talked to a lot of my music buddies, and everyone who kind of comes out the other side that's like really working and stuck with it, they all say the same thing. It's something else.
I teach at New School every now and then up in New York. And, I tell them students the same thing.
They must have loved you over there.
They don't. But they have to accept a request from a student. That's the beautiful thing about it, is if they put a request in, they have to validate that. They can't probably legally talk them out of it. So,
wow, it's kind of cool.
Thank God for that system, right?
Yeah, I agree definitely that there's a lot of musicians that get caught up in that, and they're having to skip out on gigs, or they're having to like miss opportunities because they have a workload from them on like in school. Not to mention there's a lot of the business side that's overlooked, I think, or just like the preparation of what it means to be on a gig. It's like they can come and run, scales, and they got all the chops in the world. They have no real understanding of application yet, which I think only comes from the experience of being on a gig and working with other people. There is a mentorship aspect of it, and the pressure of knowing that there's a grade at the end of it that says whether or not you pass or fail, that makes you spend those 8 hours a day in the practice room. But I think that if you can find that outside of music school without paying all that money, like you're saying, the private lessons and stuff can offer the same thing. But even then, there's still a level of like, I don't know. I think overall, if there's another option, it definitely makes more sense.
I'll put it this way. I think that the only good thing about school is you meet other people that can connect the dots.
Exactly.
But you can do that the same way if you go out every night. And I think if you guys can remember being 21, you're going out every night anyway.
Right.
So it's like, especially a city like New York, there's a crew for everybody. Yeah. So I wholeheartedly agree with that opinion.
Do
My
that.
opinion is this, okay? We are entering the age now that younger musicians think smooth jazz is cool because it's been marketed a certain way.
Yeah.
And I think we all three know who I'm referring to, probably.
Yeah.
Right? Without saying his name, because I don't want to say his name because it might be like that movie, the Candyman might show up somehow.
Yeah.
But I am deeply disturbed that a lot of the younger musicians now are basically listening to smooth music when it's being advertised as not such, and that's very disturbing to me. Like you should be. Could you imagine when we were younger and you're like, well, who's your favorite man? Who are you listening to? You're like, yeah, I'm really big on like this Kenny G record.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
I'm really big on the Rippingtons record, which again is not taking away from them as musicians, but they have decided to go down a route of criticism based on more, because it's cheese dick shit, So.
Yeah, cheese dick shit. Yeah.
And now we've entered an age where it's infiltrated where that's the hip stuff.
Right.
So it greatly disturbs me, some of the things that I see on my Instagram feed of what is essentially edgy now, which is the complete opposite. There's no teeth at all.
Yeah, it's exactly what it is. To me, it seems like a watered down version. It seems like a failed attempt at something, right? And it's like, well, this is obtainable. This is easy, and it sounds a certain way. So let's do this rather than just like really putting the work and going for it and taking a risk.
Yeah, or just not being exposed. I mean, it's again like it's the one particular artist I'm talking about. His music definitely reflects his personality. So I think he is truly being honest, but it doesn't mean I have to fucking like it or
right.
or So, but it just so happens that's the hot ticket now. One of them.
Yeah, I definitely feel that, man, for sure.
I would say his name, but I can't say it. I'm gonna just leave it at that. I can't say his name.
No, that's probably a smart call.
Yeah, the problem is I feel like it should be obvious, but I've got like 3 or 4 guesses. I won't guess. I won't put you in that position, but I think it's equally alarming that I don't know exactly who it is. I don't know exactly who it is by this.
Yeah.
All right, my unpopular opinion this week. I've been sitting on this one for a minute, but I gotta say it. Rappers who claim to be the greatest are rarely the greatest. In fact, they're never the greatest. And this is a trend that's been happening, I think, since the beginning of hip hop. However, there's a difference between being in like a rap battle and proclaiming something versus literally marketing yourself as such. And I think the first time I experienced this was when I was in high school, and Lil Wayne came out with this persona, and like the greatest rapper alive song came out and all this. Okay, but you're not the greatest rapper alive, right? Because Lil Wayne, for all of his influence in the pop world and his ushering in of what I would consider today to be called mumble rap, I think that Lil Wayne was the purveyor of that entire genre. I think when you have rappers like, Mos Def and Talib Kweli and people within that sphere that exist and are still putting music out, you can't call yourself the greatest rapper alive, especially if you're operating in the pop world just as a skill set. You know what I mean?
I've had, it's funny. I've had this talk about other genres as well. And I think I think the point of that is that it doesn't even matter.
Right.
So that's the really kind of crazy thing is like you take a guy that claims I'm the greatest at anything. It kind of goes the sports route, right?
Right. Right.
There's a guy that I know very well, worked with him. He's an incredible musician. Explain to me why that's a good mindset to have because it doesn't matter.
I see. So it's kind of like a reverse thing where it's like, okay, you can say it, but it doesn't actually mean anything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Because I mean, honestly, it's like it's like if you think about, I bet an unpopular opinion would be the guys we think are the greatest, the majority of people. Like, they probably go, who is that?
Yeah, that's very true. Yeah.
He's the greatest. I've never even, who's that?
Yeah.
I like this guy. It's like, what?
Yeah, it's just, it's
or who would you think, who you think is the greatest rapper of all time is?
I think that you're correct in saying that it's kind of like it doesn't really matter. And I don't know that there is a greatest of all time, but I think that there are people that are thinking in ways and that are communicating those ideas in ways that are far more advanced than other people. And then there's an entire culture that buys into the rhetoric, right? And the way that influences culture is dangerous, I think. When there's people that have a real message, they're trying to say a real thing, and they really put the time and work into their craft, and that's not being paid attention to in the same way. You know what I mean?
I mean, absolutely. I agree with you there. I guess you're right. It is a kind of a dangerous road to take when it leaks into everything,
Yeah, because and circling kind of to round out the whole conversation, I think circling back to the beginning, when we talk about music and artists, what we do being nonsense versus it also being the most important thing is because like music and art in general is a representation of where culture is at, just in general. And I think that when we start, when we're kind of putting on a pedestal, music, especially hip hop, hits me in a weird kind of way because I have such an affinity for the genre. But where I see it existing now on the pop level, it's an economy of words, and it's like, and to now have some of the most popular rappers on the planet that are popular for their lack of putting together a cohesive sentence, you know what I mean? It seems counterintuitive, and I think ultimately, is a bad representation of where we could be as a culture,
Yeah, one of my favorite guys is Big Crit.
Oh yeah,
he's probably my favorite right now.
Amazing. I love Big Crit.
He's definitely conscious, and he produces everything, and I love him. But I feel you there. I mean, it's especially in that genre. I mean, it's if you look at the history of rappers, they list guys like Ric Flair as their biggest. There's a reason for that.
Yeah, totally, man.